Some of the additional regulations include Regulation 851, which is your industrial establishments. Sections 22 and 23 detail the requirements for fire safety. Regulation 21391 is your construction projects regulation in Ontario. This has multiple sections, including sections 52 to 56, as well as 67 and 68. Under the Ontario Fire Code, your fire code provides you with specific guidelines and responsibilities for the workplace with regards to fire safety, and the building code also references the fire code as well as has specific requirements as well. So I guess a big question really is, what is fire? So there are three elements, which is what's called the fire triangle. There's heat, which will be an ignition source, fuel, and oxygen. All of these must combine in a very precise way for a fire to start and to continue to burn. Scientists have developed the concept of a fire triangle to aid in understanding of the cause of fires and how they can be prevented and extinguished. If one element of the fire triangle is not present or removed, the fire will not start, or if it's already burning, it will extinguish. Ignition sources could include any material, equipment, or operation that emits a spark or flame. This could include torches, static electricity, and grinding operations. It can also include equipment or components that radiate heat, such as kettles, catalytic converters, and mufflers. Fuel sources could be anything from combustible materials such as wood, paper, trash, or clothing, flammable liquids such as gasoline or solvents, or flammable gases such as propane or natural gas. Your oxygen comes from the air in the atmosphere. The air contains approximately 79% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. Workplaces have abundance of all three of the fire triangle elements present. Depending on the type of workplace, it can have significant hazards. Keeping heat and ignition sources away from materials, equipment, and structures that can act as a fuel to complete the fire triangle. Housekeeping and building maintenance is probably the most important single factor in the prevention of fires. Specific hazards include combustible materials stored in non-approved areas, fire and smoke barrier doors not operating properly or wedged open, improper storage of flammable liquids and gases, defective electrical wiring and appliances, overfusing, and the use of extension cords as permanent wiring, clothes dryer lint collectors that are full or improperly vented, careless use of smoking materials, kitchen hoods and filters not cleaned properly or grease-laden, and improper disposal of any oily rags. There's different types of fires. These can be classified as either Class A, B, C, D, or K. Class A fires involve ordinary combustibles such as paper, trash, some plastics, wood, and cloth. A rule of thumb is if it leaves ash behind, it's a Class A fire. Class B fires involve flammable gases or liquids such as propane, oil, and gasoline. And Class C fires involve energized electrical components. Your Class D fires involve metal. A rule of thumb is if the name of the metal ends with the letters it is a Class D fire. Examples of this include aluminum, magnesium, beryllium, and sodium. And finally, your Class K fires involve vegetable or animal cooking oils and fats. These are common in commercial cooking operations using deep fat fryers. So the purpose of fire prevention is to segregate the three elements of the fire triangle and not allow them to come together. Some measures to incorporate into your fire safety planning for your workplace include your fire safety plans, fire safety equipment, and fire extinguishers. A fire safety plan is a detailed document that covers all aspects of fire safety for a specific building or property. This outlines the safe and orderly way for occupants to evacuate the building, proper maintenance and housekeeping required to prevent fires, and methods of control that minimize the damage from fires when they do occur. Fire safety plans are required by the Ontario Fire Code Section 2.8. The fire safety plan shall be kept in the building or premises in an approved location. Your fire safety plans also need to be reviewed every 12 months or if changes to the building or premises are made. Fire safety plans also need to be approved by the local fire department and reviewed, just so that they are aware and they are able to fight the fire quickly when they are in the workplace. Your fire safety equipment is a variety of different items. It may vary according to the structure's age, size, and industry. Any business and building must contain all or some of the following, including fire extinguishers, an automatic sprinkler system, both wet and dry, your fire hose reels, your fire hydrants, heat and smoke detectors, fire alarms, fire alarm control panels, and emergency and exit signs. Fire sprinkler systems are an efficient part of any fire protection system. It serves as the first line of defense against sudden fires, provides enough water to suppress the flames before going out of control, and it offers safe protection, giving extra time for a safe evacuation. There are different designs depending on the pressure, time of response, droplet size, and more factors. When a blaze ignites, the air starts to heat quickly, rising towards the ceiling and hence triggering the sprinkler system. The system consists of a glass bulb filled with a glycerin liquid which expands on contacting high temperatures. When the liquid expands, it shatters the glass, which activates the sprinkler connected to a water source. The pipe system includes pressurized water, which springs out when the heat occurs, submerging the flames and avoiding reignition. There's a few different types, including your wet sprinkler systems, your dry sprinkler systems, pre-action sprinkler systems, and deluge sprinkler systems. You also may have fire hydrants. Fire hydrants are a vital part of any fire protection system, offering a connection point that accesses a water source. The column-shaped structure provides pressurized water to aid firefighters during the whole process of fire extinguishing. They must be available and equally spaced in public areas, drawing the necessary quantity of water. They must also be tested continuously to guarantee their efficiency if a fire breaks out suddenly. Firefighters will use a wrench to remove the valve cover, and then water flows into the hose, attacking the flames. Your fire reel hose cabinets are a steel box placed in public areas and buildings used to store the required fire equipment. Designed to protect fire hose rack assembly, the fire extinguisher, and the fire hose reel. Your alarm system gives an early warning before the flames go out of control, protecting lives and property. If there's a sudden fire, the alarm provides a few seconds and it can be enough to save lives. Multi-story buildings must have an alarm system fitted on every floor to detect smoke and break into sirens in case of an emergency. Alarm systems can't suppress the fire, but they do alert others to be able to evacuate quickly. The reasons to install an alarm system would be: one, to save lives. When the fire breaks out, the smoke triggers the alarm system, sending bells and alerts to others. It can reduce property losses because when a fire starts, the response contacts the fire department immediately, which can allow them to get there quickly, which can allow them to reduce the potential damage. It also shortens the recovery time. Whenever there's an early discovery of fire and it is put out early, the earlier it's put out, the better, and the less damage it can cause. Some different types include the beam detectors, which is a device that operates by detecting smoke using a projected light beam. The optical beam detector doesn't work until the smoke reaches the device mounted to the ceiling, and it is attached to an alarm system. Once the device senses an interruption in the light beams, the alarm goes off. This can be installed in places with high ceilings, and there's two different types. There's the end-to-end beam detector, which consists of a receiver and transmitter with a distance of 5 to 100 meters between both devices. The concept operates when the receiver sends a light beam to the receiver, which detects the strength of the beam. You also have a reflective or single-end detector, which consists of a receiver and transmitter installed in one unit, opposing a reflector at the other end of the room. The concept is when the reflector reflects the beams back to the transmitter. If a solid object interrupts the light beam for just a few seconds, nothing will happen. But if the time exceeds 6 to 8 seconds, a false alarm will break out. A beam detector can tell the difference between a solid material or smoke depending on the blocked IR light ray percentage. You also have a manual call point, which is a plastic square box. Activation device will trigger the fire alarm system manually, sending sirens as an alert of fire presence. They must be clearly visible in buildings at a reachable height, and the manual call point must be at every 30 meters. Once activated, the sirens break out, giving people a chance to leave the building. Your control panel detects smoke when there's a change in electric current occurs. The panel consists of different zones of the building with flashing LEDs indicating the presence of a fire. The alarm control panel is connected to various sensors to identify any change in the electric current triggering the fire alarm. It operates by lighting up the zone attacked by the fire. One drawback to this panel, it indicates the zone using illuminated icons, but it can't determine this precise location. You also have your bells. Your alarm bells will alert the occupants of fire presence given time for a safe evacuation. They are usually connected to fire sprinklers and fire alarm systems to operate effectively during an emergency. It operates by pressing a simple switch that causes an audible stimuli, notifying the presence of fire danger. Your conventional heat detectors operate quickly when sensing a rapid temperature increase. In an emergency, the heat detector sends a signal to the control panel that allows the safe evacuation until the fire department operates. It detects currents of heated air, combustion products, and radiation heat effect. There are two common types. Your fixed temperature heat detector operates when sensing a temperature rise to a level exceeding a predetermined one, and your rate of rise detector operates when sensing the rate of change in the temperature. This could be something along the lines of if the temperature increases by 15%, it could trigger the signal that goes to the main control panel. Your sound and light devices indicate fire presence through both sirens and beaming lights. Your horn sends a high-pitched sound for a quick evacuation, while the strobe flashes lights for those with hearing impairment. Beaming lights can also act as guidance for the residents through smoke during a safe evacuation. Your strobes must be installed in the hallways, restrooms, and corridors, making sure they're clearly visible. You can also use a conventional smoke detector, which is the fastest and most reliable way to detect fires, as it senses the smoke and operating immediately. There are two common types. There's the optical smoke detector, which operates using an LED light beam that occurs inside a small chamber in the detector. Once the beam flow is interrupted, it senses smoke and the alarm is triggered. Your ionization smoke detector is the presence of an ionized chamber with a hole that allows the smoke to enter. When the smoke enters, the alarm is triggered immediately. You also have fire extinguishers. Your different types include your water, your foam, dry powder, wet chemical, and carbon dioxide. You must make sure that you select the appropriate extinguisher. The wrong extinguisher can make a fire worse, and you need to check the label on the extinguisher for the different types of fire. For example, most fire extinguishers usually will be an A, B, C type fire extinguisher. These extinguishers are not good when it comes to oil and grease fires, as it'll actually just make the fire spread further. When you're using a fire extinguisher, you need to use the pass method. You pull the safety pin, you aim the nozzle, horn, or hose at the base of the fire, you squeeze the trigger handle, and you sweep in a left to right motion. You always want to aim it and you want to squeeze it at the bottom of the fire. You don't want to just squeeze on the top. The fire starts from the bottom. So if you actually remove the actual oxygen from the bottom by using the extinguisher, it actually helps put out the fire quicker. You always want to make sure your extinguishers are located in areas at exits and where the greatest hazard exists. This could be areas such as storage. This could be certain types of equipment. You want to make sure that you have them located very close by. Make sure your extinguishers are properly installed and secured as follows. Your portable extinguishers that weigh more than 18 kilograms should be installed so that the top of the extinguisher is not more than 3.6 feet above the floor. Portable extinguishers weighing 18 kilograms or less must not be more than 1.5 meters or 5 feet above the floor. Always ensure hangers securing the fire extinguishers can support the weight and are solidly fixed to the mounting structure. Avoid mounting them in areas of high foot or vehicle traffic and make them easily visible and accessible. Your emergency lights are a series of devices used to limit potential injury if your building needs to be evacuated. In case of a fire, a storm, or immediate danger, these lighting devices aid in a safe exit and lower confusion and panic. Your signs are usually positioned above the nearest exits. They could be red or green lettering of the word exit, or they could also be a symbol to show to escape, such as the running man. Different types to choose from, including your thermoplastic, your self-luminous, your photoluminescent, and your edge lit. You also have egress pathways. These are things that you might find, for example, in airplanes. They are floor-mounted lighting that glows in the dark to provide an escape route for individuals during a blackout. They often consist of small LED bulbs, minimizing the chance of building occupants getting lost. You wouldn't use these in areas where you have machine traffic or anything like that, but in an office space, it could be something that could also be implemented. Your temporary or standby lighting will allow for activities to be maintained in the dark, and it comes in different construction size and can be used indoors or outdoors. This could include thermoplastic, which is suitable for indoor use only, steel, which is a variety of voltage and wattage capacities and remote capable. These are popular in warehouses, industrial, and institutional applications. Your wet location ones are waterproof, and they're used where moisture and water are present. In freezing temperatures, they are outfitted with internal heaters. Your architectural ones are manufactured to provide a required emergency illumination and designed to illuminate in style. And finally, your hazardous location ones are designed for environments that feature flammable and ignitable gases or vapors. So we'll go over some different fire safety tips here. First things first, you always need to make sure that you assess the workplace for any fire hazards and develop procedures to protect your workers and property. The primary method of control will be to eliminate or minimize the fire hazards where possible by altering the task or by introducing engineering controls. This process will be undertaken unless deemed economically unfeasible. If the above is not possible, then secondary controls such as administrative controls such as duration of exposure, rescheduling of work will also be taken. For your fire safety plans, you need to develop a fire safety plan and emergency procedures for the workplace. This includes procedures on how to sound the alarm, notify the fire department, building or business officials, or other designated staff, evacuate occupants, including any person who needs assistance, how to confine, control, and extinguish the fire, how and how often fire drills will be conducted, information and training for staff that are given fire safety duties, how to control fire hazards, education and training that may be necessary, detailed maintenance procedures for fire protection systems, diagrams and instructions about the type, location, and operation of any fire or emergency systems, identification of alternative fire safety measures and measures to allow the fire department access to the building and to the fire location within the building. On construction projects, you need to make sure that there's extinguishing equipment provided at readily accessible locations, and the workers who use it must be trained. You need to have at least one fire extinguisher where flammable liquids or combustible materials are stored, handled, or used, where oil-fired or gas-fired equipment other than permanent furnace equipment in a building is used, any welding or open flame operations, and on each story of an enclosed building that's constructed or altered. The extinguisher must be rated a minimum of 4A or 40 BC. The fire extinguishing equipment shall be protected from physical damage and from freezing, and after a fire extinguisher is used, it must be refilled or replaced immediately, and you must inspect them on a monthly basis. If you have 2 or more stories, you must have a permanent or temporary standpipe installed. And it must be no more than 2 stories away from the highest level of work. You must install a permanent standpipe before you disconnect any temporary standpipe that is installed. And if you install a temporary standpipe, the constructor must post and provide to the fire department a floor plan indicating the location of hose outlets, furthest point from the hose on each floor, and exit locations. A permanent standpipe must have hoses that are no longer than 23 meters. They must be readily operable, available, and protect all parts of the building, and they must connect to the street side fire connection. Every hose must be used with a permanent standpoint, must have a valve, must be 38 millimeters in diameter with a straight stream or fog nozzle, and it must be stored on racks for immediate and available use. Sorry about that. And your temporary standpipes, you must have at least 1 hose outlet per floor, clear access valve and hose attached to each hose outlet and the nozzle attached to each hose. Must be located between 30 to 90 centimeters above the ground level on a side of the building that faces the street. And the hose outlet must have a valve and be capable to accept a 38 millimeter diameter hose. Housekeeping measures to protect from fire safety include ensure no smoking inside any building, including garages, stairwells, or ramps. Do not allow combustibles and flammable materials to accumulate. Ensure your fire exit doors are easily opened, not obstructed and not propped open. Ensure your exit signs are illuminated and visible. Do not overload electrical circuits and remove frayed extension cords from use. Always inspect your workplace daily to check for any accumulation of fire hazards. Egress routes are clear and free of trip hazards, and chemicals are stored correctly and away from any ignition sources. You need to provide enough appropriate fire extinguishers that are inspected and maintained according to Ontario Fire Code. Ensure emergency lights are functional and aiming at the nearest exit every month. Ensure there are at least 18 inches of clearance between any sprinkler head and any merchandise or storage materials. Never put burning materials into garbage containers. Ensure your space heaters are unplugged before you leave for the night and keep them away from any flammable materials. Train all your employees to be aware of these fire hazards, report the hazards and evacuation procedures and fire drills. If you're using a temporary heat source, this may be found on construction sites or it could even be in some industrial establishments. A heating device shall be located, protected, and used in such a way that there's no risk of igniting a tarpaulin or similar temporary enclosure or combustible materials that are adjacent to it. The heating device shall be protected from damage and from overturning. No heating device shall be located so as to restrict any means of egress. And a heating device that generates noxious products of combustion must discharge the products of combustion outside the building or structure in which it's located. When you're storing flammable materials, make sure the storage area is well ventilated, free of ignition sources. Make sure it's cool and dry, away from any elevators, building and room exits or main aisles leading to exits. Must be accessible by firefighters, must be labeled with suitable warning signs. Make sure wherever possible your chemicals or flammable materials are stored on the ground floor. They should be inspected regularly for any deficiencies. Make sure you supply adequate firefighting, spill cleanup equipment, keep storage areas cool and dry, store flammable and combustible liquids away from incompatible materials such as oxidizers, Use approved containers for the disposal of rags and other work, and make sure you store, handle, and use flammable and combustible liquids in well-ventilated areas. Whenever you're dispensing flammable materials, always take care when you're dispensing from one container to another, and dispense from one container at a time. Finish dispensing one material before you start to dispense another. Be sure the containers are closed after dispensing to control hazardous vapors and to avoid accidental spills. Check these devices periodically to ensure they work properly and do not leak. Use an approved safety drip can below each drum faucet to catch any spills or drips from worn or damaged faucets. Never dispense flammable and combustible liquids near any ignition source. Always make sure the metal containers are bonded and grounded when dispensing. Never transfer liquids by pressurizing their usual shipping containers with air, and mark dispensing areas with suitable warning signs. Always make sure you review and obtain the safety data sheets for any material that you're working with. Be aware of all the hazards of the materials you work with and know which of the materials you work with are flammable or combustible liquids. Eliminate any ignition source, include sparks, smoking, flames, or hot surfaces. Use the smallest amount of flammable liquid necessary in the work area, and use approved equipment, including labeled safety containers for flammable and combustible liquids. Keep these containers closed when they're not in use. Bond and ground metal containers when transferring flammable and combustible liquids. Practice good housekeeping and equipment maintenance. Keep the areas clear of any burnable liquids. Wear your PPE, know how to handle emergencies, and follow any health and safety rules that are in place. Make sure you inspect your equipment regularly and maintain it because it is important for controlling hazards. Ensure your maintenance personnel know the hazards of the materials that they might be exposed to. Carry out repairs to equipment properly, including special equipment like explosion-proof fittings. Fires and explosions have resulted from the addition of non-approved parts or equipment to approved systems. Do not use safety containers that are damaged in any way. If repairs using approved parts cannot restore the safety containers to a safe condition, they must be discarded and not used. Combustible materials shall not be permitted to accumulate in quantities and locations which constitute a fire hazard. Combustible materials shall not be permitted to accumulate in any part of a stairway or other means of egress. Combustible materials shall not be used to absorb flammable or combustible liquid spills within the building. Greasy or oily rags or materials subject to spontaneous heating shall be deposited in a proper safety container or be removed from the premises completely. Flammable liquids must not be used for cleaning purposes. You must dispense and store flammable liquids in approved containers that are properly labeled and sealed. Devices that have open flames shall be securely supported in non-combustible holders and located or protected to prevent the flame accidentally contacting any combustible material. All employees that are involved in handling, use, and storage are required to know the hazards associated with these materials and how to work safely with them. And safety data sheets must be readily available for all hazardous materials. Fire extinguishing equipment shall be of the suitable type and size to permit the evacuation of workers during a fire. Fire extinguishing equipment shall be protected from physical damage and from freezing. If an extinguisher is used, it must be refilled or replaced immediately. Every fire extinguisher must be inspected for defects or deterioration at least once a month by a competent worker shall record the date of the inspection on a tag attached to it. An extinguisher should be inspected monthly by checking your pressure gauge, inspecting the rubber hose and fitting, inverting the extinguisher several times to resuspend the material, or ensuring the inspection cards are completed with the name and date of the inspection. So with that, I know that was a lot of information, and I just wanted to thank you for attending the webinar today. We have provided some contact information for myself as well as for HeartZap. If you have any questions about fire safety plans or fire safety requirements for the workplace, please feel free to reach out and we'd be more than happy to assist. And with that, just want to open the floor to see if there are any questions. If you'd like, you can take yourself off mute if you do have a question. Thank you for attending, Dave. I appreciate that. Okay, so if there's no questions, then we'll end it here. And we just want to thank you again for attending. And this is one of our regular monthly webinars that we are hosting. Our next one will be, I believe, March 27th. And we'll be talking about first aid requirements. So if you'd like to register, keep an eye out for the e-blast or on social media, and we can get you registered for the next one as well. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and thanks again, and stay safe.